I was sitting in a diner a few months ago with a retired truck driver named Alan. He had just turned 63. His coffee had gone cold, but he kept stirring it anyway, staring down at the Social Security estimate he'd printed from the government website. He looked exhausted, not dramatic, just worn down in the way people get after 40 years of waking up before sunrise and carrying responsibilities that never really let up. He looked at me and said, "Everyone keeps telling me to wait until 70 because the check gets bigger, but my back already hurts getting out of bed now. What exactly am I waiting for?" That question stayed with me because the financial world talks about Social Security. It's a math equation, but most people aren't living math equations. They're living real lives inside real bodies that don't always cooperate with long-term optimization strategies. The standard advice sounds clean and logical. Delay your benefits as long as possible. Maximize your monthly check. Increase survivor benefits. Let delayed retirement credits stack up. On paper, the argument makes perfect sense. Wait longer, receive more. But retirement is not lived on paper. The problem with most Social Security advice is that it assumes your future self will have the same energy, mobility, and priorities that you have today. The calculators assume you'll still want to travel at 74 the way you dreamed about at 62. They assume your health remains stable. They assume your spouse lives long enough to benefit from the larger check. They assume life unfolds in a smooth, predictable line. But real retirement rarely works that way. If you're somewhere between 55 and 65 right now, trying to decide whether to claim early or wait, you're probably carrying more pressure than people realize. You may still be supporting adult children. You may be helping aging parents. Your job may feel heavier than it did 10 years ago. Maybe you've saved responsibly and still don't feel confident. Or maybe you feel guilty even thinking about retiring because inflation has made everything more expensive than you expected. The decision about when to claim Social Security is not just about money. It's about energy, health, time, taxes, marriage, and the uncomfortable reality that nobody truly knows how many strong years they have left. One of the biggest mistakes people make is focusing entirely on the monthly number while ignoring the emotional context surrounding the decision. I've watched people delay benefits until 70, only to spend most of their early retirement years dealing with surgeries, caregiving responsibilities, or health limitations that made the larger check feel strangely irrelevant. I've also watched people claim at 62 out of fear, locking themselves into permanently reduced benefits they later regretted once inflation and medical costs started accelerating. The truth is that both extremes can backfire when the decision is made emotionally instead of strategically. For people born in 1960 or later, full retirement age is now 67. Claiming at 62 means accepting roughly a 30% permanent reduction in your monthly benefits. That reduction doesn't disappear later. It stays with you for life. If your benefit at 67 would have been $2,400 per month, claiming at 62 could reduce it to roughly $1,680. At first glance, some people look at that difference and think, I can live with that. But what many don't realize is that inflation adjustments are applied to the smaller amount forever. Every future cost of living increase starts from a lower base. Over 20 or 30 years, the gap becomes much larger than it appears at the beginning. And yet, even with that reality, waiting is not automatically the smarter move, because the larger benefit only matters if you live long enough and healthy enough to meaningfully enjoy it. That's the part the calculators never capture. They can estimate financial break-even points, but they cannot calculate physical break-even points. They can't measure how much your knees hurt after climbing stairs. They can't estimate the emotional toll of another 8 years in a job you secretly dread. They can't predict whether your spouse's health will suddenly change and force your retirement plans into survival mode instead of freedom mode. A woman named Denise once explained this better than any financial chart ever could. She retired at 62 against the advice of nearly everyone around her. Her financial advisor wanted her to wait until at least 67. Her co-workers told her she was leaving money on the table, but Denise had watched both of her parents die before age 73. She had early signs of rheumatoid arthritis. More importantly, she had spent 35 years working rotating nursing shifts that left her emotionally drained. She told me something I've never forgotten. She said, "I realized I was saving my healthiest years for a future version of myself that might never arrive." She claimed early, bought a small camper van with her husband, and spent the next 6 years traveling across the country visiting national parks. Financially, maybe waiting would have produced a larger lifetime total, but emotionally and physically, she believes she made the right choice without hesitation. The retirement industry rarely talks honestly about the difference between wealth maximization and life maximization. Those are not always the same thing. Many retirees spend their healthiest years trying to optimize future security while quietly sacrificing present vitality. Then suddenly, the body changes, energy declines, confidence shrinks, travel becomes stressful instead of exciting. The opportunity window closes before the spreadsheet says it should. At the same time, claiming early comes with risks people underestimate. The biggest is longevity risk. Many retirees assume their expenses will naturally decline over time, but healthcare often replaces lifestyle spending later in life. The money that once funded vacations eventually funds medications, treatments, mobility devices, home modifications, and assisted care. Inflation hits retirees differently because medical inflation tends to rise faster than general inflation. That means a permanently reduced Social Security check can become increasingly painful later in retirement when flexibility disappears. There's another issue most people don't see until it's too late. Claiming early affects more than just you. If you are the higher earner in a marriage, your decision directly impacts your spouse's future survivor benefit. This becomes incredibly important after one spouse passes away. The surviving spouse generally keeps the larger Social Security check, but only the amount that actually existed. If you permanently reduced your benefit by claiming early, your spouse inherits that smaller number for the rest of their life. I knew a couple named Richard and Elaine who learned this the hard way. Richard claimed at 62 because he feared Social Security reforms would reduce future benefits. He wanted certainty. At the time, it felt reasonable. He accepted a reduced check and never reconsidered it. Richard passed away unexpectedly at 74. Elaine survived him by nearly 12 years. After his death, she stepped into his benefit amount as survivor income. Except his reduced check became her permanent reality too. The decision Richard made at 62 continued, affecting Elaine well into her 80s. That's the hidden weight of early claiming that most people never fully think through. Then there's the tax side of retirement, which becomes more complicated than many people expect. One of the most overlooked opportunities in retirement planning exists between the moment you stop working and the moment you begin taking Social Security. Financial planners often call this the golden gap or golden window. During those years, your taxable income may temporarily drop significantly. That creates an opportunity to perform Roth conversions at lower tax brackets before required minimum distributions begin later in life. Most retirees underestimate how powerful this window can be. Imagine someone retires at 63 but delays Social Security until 70. During those 7 years, they may have unusually low taxable income that allows them to move portions of traditional IRA money into Roth accounts. While paying relatively low tax rates, those Roth funds can then grow tax-free for the rest of retirement. More importantly, smaller traditional IRA balances later mean smaller required minimum distributions, lower future taxes, and potentially lower taxation on Social Security benefits itself. But once you begin collecting Social Security, that planning window narrows. The added income can push you into higher tax brackets and reduce conversion flexibility. Many retirees unknowingly give away Years of tax planning opportunity simply because nobody explained the strategy clearly before they filed. And then there's the trap almost nobody sees coming until it lands directly on top of them. The taxation of Social Security benefits, the thresholds that determine whether your Social Security becomes taxable, were created decades ago and never meaningfully adjusted for inflation. As retirement income rises over time, more retirees quietly drift into taxable territory without realizing it. The formula itself feels deceptively simple until you experience it personally. Withdrawals from traditional IRAs count toward provisional income calculations. So does half of your Social Security benefit. That means additional retirement withdrawals can trigger taxation on Social Security itself. Many retirees discover that taking extra money for a home repair, vehicle purchase, or emergency expense suddenly increases their tax burden far more than expected. What looked like a straightforward withdrawal creates a ripple effect throughout the return. Widows often experience this even more painfully. When one spouse dies, household income may decrease, but filing status changes from married filing jointly to single. Tax brackets compress, income thresholds tighten. A surviving spouse can end up paying higher taxes despite living on less total income. It feels backward because emotionally it is backward, but that's how the system works. Many surviving spouses describe this transition as financially disorienting because nobody warned them ahead of time. All of these moving parts create a strange reality about retirement planning. The biggest mistakes are rarely caused by one catastrophic decision. They're caused by stacking small decisions without understanding how they interact over time. Claiming early, ignoring survivor benefits, missing Roth conversion years, triggering unnecessary taxes, underestimating healthcare inflation. Separately, each issue may seem manageable. Combined, they can reshape an entire retirement. But after saying all of this, I still want to be careful not to turn retirement into a fear exercise, because fear creates bad decisions too. Some people delay retirement so aggressively that they forget the entire point of financial independence in the first place. Money is a tool. It is supposed to support life, not replace it. I've met retirees with very large portfolios who were too physically limited to enjoy the freedom they spent decades building. And I've met retirees with modest incomes who built deeply meaningful lives because they prioritized time, relationships, and health while they still had access to them. This is why I believe the most important retirement question is not, how do I maximize my Social Security check? The better question is, what kind of retirement life am I realistically trying to build? Those are very different conversations. If your job is destroying your physical health, claiming earlier may protect something more valuable than money. If your family has a history of longevity and you're financially stable enough to wait, delaying may create enormous long-term security. Context matters more than universal rules. Retirement researchers sometimes describe retirement in phases. First come the go-go years, when health and mobility remain relatively strong. Then the slow-go years, when energy begins declining and lifestyle spending shifts. Finally come the no-go years, when health limitations dominate daily life. Most retirees spend the majority of discretionary money during those early go-go years. That's when travel happens. That's when hobbies expand. That's when family memories are made. The challenge is that many financial strategies optimize for income growth during years when retirees may no longer be physically able to enjoy the lifestyle they once imagined. That doesn't mean you should recklessly claim benefits early without considering the consequences. It simply means the break-even calculator is incomplete. It measures dollars, not vitality. It measures check size, not freedom. It measures longevity averages, not your specific life. So instead of asking only, what age gives me the biggest lifetime payout, maybe ask yourself a few harder questions. How does your body honestly feel today? What kind of work stress are you carrying? What health patterns exist in your family? What experiences matter most to you while you still have energy to pursue them? What would your spouse's financial future look like if you passed away first? How much certainty do you need emotionally versus mathematically? Because retirement planning is not just about surviving longer financially. It's about making sure the years you worked so hard to reach still belong to you when they finally arrive. At the end of the day, there is no universally perfect claiming age. There is only the age that best fits your health, marriage, taxes, career exhaustion, financial resources, and vision for the years ahead. Sometimes waiting until 70 is absolutely the right move. Sometimes claiming at 62 is the wiser decision, even if the spreadsheet disagrees. Wisdom in retirement planning comes from understanding the trade-offs honestly instead of blindly following generic advice. And maybe that's the real lesson underneath all of this. Social Security is not simply a financial decision. It's a life decision. Wearing financial clothing. The calculators can help, but they cannot tell you what your strongest years are worth. Only you can answer that part.